Hello, everybody, and welcome to CFB Unfiltered. I am Blaine Gilmer here with Josh Taylor and Donovan White here for Unfiltered Reaction as we break down everything that happened in Week 6 of college football as we head into Week 7. We're also going to compare the new AP poll rankings to our top 10 rankings. Yes, CFB Unfiltered unveils 3 sets of rankings as myself, Josh, and Donovan all give our rankings. And then we're also going to have some game previews for us. But Josh, we're going to hit you first with this unfiltered reaction segment. You're highly qualified here as a Alabama Crimson Tide fan. So first off, condolences. Sorry for the loss here, Josh. But, just kind of talk to us about what happened there in College Station last night.
Yeah, I am dead inside. And to you, Donovan. No, it was it had the feels of a classic Alabama upset game. We thought, before the season, this is a tough one. You circle it because it's at Texas A&M somewhere. It's a hard place to play in general, but for some reason, Alabama, back to Johnny Manziel days, throwing dimes to Mike Evans, it just had that feel for it, a night game at College Station. So as soon as Malachi Moore got ejected, you could just tell it had that vibe of like Alabama has to play its A game or things will turn south. Because believe it or not, Malachi Moore is the quarterback of the defense. He is the guy that puts everyone in their place. Yes, Henry To'oTo'o might be the play caller, but Malachi Moore is the guy who just dictates where everyone goes on defense. And you can tell because Zach Manziel or Calzada went off. We made him look like some quarterback that we haven't seen at all this season. After Haynes King goes down, then this guy steps up, struggled against Colorado. He's looked okay in the last couple of games, but you just don't expect this kind of performance against an Alabama Nick Saban coached team. So the defense was a mess. The play calling was a mess within the red zone. For some reason, we're passing it like 80% of the time in the red zone when Brian Robinson has 24 carries for 147 yards, 6.1 per rush, by the way. So to me, it's just a lot of things went wrong. Players, coaching, play calling, but then also there's 2 mistakes early in the game, fumbling the ball and then throwing that interception in the red zone by Bryce Young. You can't do that. You can't go down early. Yes, you come back in the second half, but still just too much of a hole early in the game. And here I am wearing all black on a Monday. So that's just how it happens. You got to play your A game. You're going to get everyone's best game every time you play them because you are Alabama, and it's going to happen. You're not going to just win every single game. So you got to pick yourself up. We're still number 5, and I know we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and one thing you can always seem to bet on, Josh and Donovan, is when you have an Alabama make a comeback like that and they take the lead, usually can bet on that other team to crumble, right? And Alabama just kind of enforce their will there late. But you got to give it to Texas A&M. They hung tough. Jimbo Fisher and crew did a good job. But speaking of betting, guys, you can go to all the different contests over on Bet Online because all eyes are on the gridiron and teams are back for another football season. As always, Bet Online is your number 1 spot for all your pro and college football action this season with new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests. Bet Online is the number 1 source for everything football. So head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your bonus from football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of everything they have available for the 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. And Donovan, we had all bet that Iowa would take care of business versus Penn State. A little bit tighter than I think we all thought, but just like that Texas A&M and Alabama game, an exciting 3-point victory there for the home team. In fact, Iowa takes care of business just like in that A&M game. So, Donovan, your take on your unfiltered reaction to Iowa holding off Penn State.
Yeah, listen, I said going into this game, we're either going to learn a lot about one team or we're not going to learn much about either. And it seems like we didn't learn a whole lot about either team, right? Penn State kept it close. They lost Sean Clifford middle of the game to a rib or a collarbone injury maybe. He didn't play that well, but he was at least moving the offense right against a tough Iowa defense. We kind of knew what we knew about Iowa's defense, right? They're tough, right? They're going to force turnovers. I think 3 or 4 interceptions, right? Backup quarterback came in for Penn State. and they struggled, right? They struggled mightily. And it wasn't even so much Iowa's defense. Penn State's offensive line is the reason they lost this game, right? When your quarterback goes down, you have to step up for your team. And when your quarterback who does go down is your leading rusher for 3 carries for 36 yards today, you're in trouble, right? The Iowa defense is going to take care of business against you like they did against Penn State. So credit to the Iowa defense. We cannot forget what Penn State failed to do, and that was capitalize on a little bit of momentum there. They had a big momentum up 14 or 17-3, most of the game early. They failed to capitalize.
No doubt. And, it's an absolute rock fight up there compared to what happened down south, right, with Arkansas and Ole Miss that had 1,287 yards in that game versus these teams didn't even combine for half of that together. I think Arkansas had 676 by themselves. You got Iowa over here that had 110 yards rushing, Penn State 107. So just wasn't a very exciting game, but at the end there, you had Iowa making the play when they needed to, getting the interception, and now they kind of live to fight another day. That playoff picture, Josh, is getting thrown into. I know you've got your own theories on that, so we'll get to it. But speaking of that, we have a new number 1 in the country. The Georgia Bulldogs ranked number 1. And, it's the first time since 1980 that Georgia has been ranked number 1 this late in the season. So Georgia, it's an odd thing with the Georgia fan base down here, Josh. Half the Georgia fan base is just elated that Georgia's number 1, and half the fan base is like,
oh no,
it's the kiss of death. Please don't rank us number 1, that kind of stuff. So it's interesting to see that happen. But in your opinion, Josh, I mean, is Georgia the most complete team right now and how they're playing football?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, Iowa would throw its, cap in the ring, talking about best defense in the nation. But right now, Georgia is the complete team. I want to see what this passing game looks like, though, Blaine. I know it's kind of like what you're looking at, too. I want to see a consistent passing game to where you can win the national championship against Alabama, something Georgia kind of always struggled with. And then our backup quarterbacks, of course, too. So I want to see more of that passing game. Y'all can run the ball. You've got like 18 5-star running backs right now catching it. Running the ball. So I just want to see a little bit more of a passing game.
Well, I will say, both of you two jokers were like knocking on the mailman last week, Stetson Bennett. And I said, hey, they didn't have to throw the football against Arkansas. That's why they didn't. Only 11 attempts. He goes 14 of 21 for 231 yards and 2 touchdowns. Was never had any forced throws or anything like that. Hit Ladd McConkey on a strike down the field. I mean, you got 2 guys that nobody, if you look at pictures of them, and Ladd McConkey and Stetson Bennett, you would never, it's like the pictures from like Step Brothers or something. 2 little curly headed dudes out there, just not really looking impressive on the hoof, but Ladd McConkey can absolutely fly. Stetson Bennett also did some things with his legs. So Georgia, number 1 in the country, definitely the number 1 defense in the country, now only allowing 5.5 points per game. But like I said, we talked about Alabama, we talked about Iowa and Georgia. Now we're going to go down to the Red River showdown that occurred. And my goodness, Donovan, it's like nobody wanted to win this game at the end, the way they were playing defense. But you had the interesting dynamic of Caleb Williams, all that kind of stuff that's kind of came to a head with that Georgia team. Just kind of give us your take on the Red River showdown.
I mean, can we first talk about Bijan Robinson? I mean, is he – I don't care that Texas lost. I don't care if Texas loses 5 more games. If he keeps playing that way, he deserves to be on the Heisman finalist, stage at the end of the season. He is a certified dog, right? I mean, credit to that Texas offensive line, but credit to neither one of their defenses, right? Again, like you said, they were just begging the other offense, say, "Here, win the game." And again, Texas up at one point 28-7 in the first quarter, then up 38-20 at half. They had everything going for them, right? Spencer Rattler struggling. Backup quarterback, true freshman, comes in. There is no reason Texas shouldn't have won this game, and yet they just begged Oklahoma to take it away from them, and that's what they did. Thrilling game. I mean, this is about as classic of a Big 12 game as you can. I know, electrifying, no defense, lots of points, which we might not have been completely expecting. It's interesting to see where Oklahoma goes now with the new kind of momentum and direction at quarterback, if that's the way they stay with Caleb Williams.
No doubt. And, you got an interesting dynamic there. Oklahoma had 339 rushing yards on the game. I mean, Texas just getting run through like a sieve, but also, you got 388 passing yards for Texas. So, I mean, Oklahoma wasn't able to really, make stops when they needed to either. It's just which team had the ball last. I mean, it was like an NBA regular season game, right? Nobody's playing any defense. They don't care. And it's
like
just
the All-Star game.
yeah, whoever's got the ball last, that's what it's going to be. So I will say that Oklahoma, like you said, Bijan Robinson was impressive in the game. Kennedy Brooks, you got to give a shout out to him. 25 carries, 217 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I'm just going to throw out this angle out there. I know we got a lot of Big 12 fans that watch the channel here. Oklahoma and Texas are about to jump ship and go to the SEC. Both of these teams are going to have to change the way they recruit and change the way they play football if they're going to win in the SEC. There's no question about it. There has been a reversal of trends, Josh, and that's one thing I wanted to add to our unfiltered reaction here. It seems now the team that has it's gone from basketball and grass back towards a trend of who's got the more just strong and athletic and physical line of scrimmage and is able to run the football and establish kind of dominance. Georgia's being methodical in how they're doing things. Kentucky's undefeated, doing things that way. Alabama, the way that they beat Ole Miss a couple of weeks ago was just to bloody their nose, and Texas A&M just turned right around and did the same thing to them on the line of scrimmage this week. So I think it's an interesting dynamic, and I think that's something that Texas and Oklahoma will have to adjust to.
Yeah, I think Sarkisian knows that too. Obviously, being at Alabama, like he knows what to expect. Lincoln Riley, they've never really had like the best defense. I'm gonna say like the last like 2-3 years it's gotten better though. Like when Kenneth Murray was at linebacker, like it was better. Like when they played Georgia in the playoffs, like it was good in there. But they had such a good offense. They didn't really need to lean on the defense. But like you said, they need to completely change how they recruit and stuff. But if Caleb Williams is the kind of quarterback they're bringing to the SEC, if they keep up that kind of recruiting, it's going to be interesting because I don't think I've ever remembered a unanimous #1 overall pick, Heisman favorite, NIL signing deal, like big shot guy. He's on QB1 special on Netflix, whatever it was, to just benched. Yeah. Like, how does that happen? Like the video of him like calling out his wide receiver at camp, saying like, "Oh, you suck," blah blah blah. Like, no, Spencer Riley, you are the problem on this team. Like the tables have turned for you, sir. Like I want to see how they react to that. Really awkward at the end of the game. Spencer Riley's face when they scored at the end, they were like, he was like disappointed. He's like, man, like what do I do? And then like Lincoln Riley hugs Caleb Williams and his wife is like kissing him, like thanking him for winning the game pretty much. And Riley's in the background like I guess I'm like the forgotten guy now. So I want to see what goes on moving forward with that. Lincoln Riley is good with his quarterbacks. I don't know if he's going to edge out Caleb Williams, which he should do, because I've never seen a performance like a debut like that. Just come out and win a game being down, like Donovan said, 28-7 in the first quarter, and then just putting it on Texas. I mean, he revived Marvin Mims' career, who did nothing all season, hasn't scored at all this season, and then boom, Caleb Williams comes in, and the entire team around him goes up. Kennedy Brooks is finally running the ball. Caleb Williams is running the ball, and Marvin Mims is catching passes. So the entire team got better, and Spencer Rattler is still just kind of down there figuring out what to do.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a point too. I'm not saying that Oklahoma does not recruit well. I'm saying they're going to have to change how they recruit a little bit differently. They recruit at gummit, Blaine. I can't talk tonight. They recruit at an elite level when it comes to skill positions. Their wide receivers, their even running backs, their class of 2023 is loaded. They got a guy like Brandon Ennis from American Heritage down in Florida. They've got Trayon Webb coming in over there. They've got DeAndre Moore Jr. coming in that class of 2023. So in a couple of years when they go to the SEC, those kind of guys are going to make a big difference. But in the trenches, Donovan, I think that physicality is going to need to be there, and that's not an element I don't think that Oklahoma and Texas have right now.
No, you're going to need to add some beef to that O-line. You, like you mentioned, look at the top 10 right now and look at what they're doing. Michigan State, dominant run game, right? Alabama, even with the struggles they had, their offensive line is massive, and they got the best left tackle in the country in Evan Neal, right? You look at Georgia, they're dominating the trenches and both sides of the ball. Iowa, their offensive line, they got the best O-lineman in the country. and their defensive line is dominant. You are seeing a trend now, which is very refreshing to see as a former offensive lineman, of going back away from this, passing game league, right? This all quarterback, everything's all skill player, everything, to kind of getting back to basics in a way of this is how you succeed, this is how you're going to do it. Maybe it changes a year from now, 5 years from now, who knows? But to get with the times, you have to recruit like the times.
No doubt. And then the last thing on our CFB unfiltered reaction here is the ACC is an absolute train wreck. You've got North Carolina, who was supposed to be all everything before the season. Mac Brown had all this momentum. They get blown out by Florida State. Florida State beats them by 10 in Chapel Hill.
They do the Jordan logo after they scored.
Yeah, just crazy right there. Florida State having a little bit of success right there. Then you have, of course, Wake Forest winning in overtime. Wake Forest is supposed to be the cream of the crop, right, in that league now. Everybody's crowning them. Okay, they're our hope. They're our hope to be a playoff team. They're our hope to win the ACC unscathed, and they almost lose to Syracuse, who lost to Florida State last week as well. So, just craziness going on over there in the ACC. I don't see any way that there's any team over there that ends up having a shot. Of course, we've talked ad nauseum about the Dabo Sweeney struggles and things like that. So that ACC is something that I think I'm just going to enjoy watching falter throughout the year. It's going to be somebody that, there should be better football in the ACC with the recruiting base that a lot of those ACC schools have, and it's just getting eat alive by, I think, the Big Ten and the SEC just out recruiting them in those areas. So it's very interesting to see.
They might not finish with a team ranked in the top 25, honestly. Like if Wake Forest loses one, they're way out of the top 25 because they're only 19 right now. They were. I don't know what they are currently, but they were 5-0 and they were 19. If they lose a game, they're out. If Clemson loses another game, which they might, especially like an ACC championship game, they might not finish the season with an actual ranked team, which is really sad.
Yeah, and speaking of the top 25 and those rankings, Josh, wanted to talk about, we're going to get to our rankings, but I want to compare them. Let's talk about the top. I'll say the top 12 right now in the AP top 25 as it came out this week. You had Georgia at number 1, Iowa 2, Oklahoma 3, Cincinnati 4, Alabama 5, Ohio State 6, Michigan at 7. Michigan's got to love that, being 6-0 and Ohio State being put one spot ahead of them. That's really just sticking it to them. I think some of those AP voters. Penn State, another Big Ten East team there. So 6, 7, and 8, all the Big Ten East. Michigan State is in there as well. So actually 4 Big Ten East teams right there in the top 10. That's pretty impressive. And then you have Oregon rounding out the top 10 with Kentucky. Has that matchup looming with Georgia this week. College game day going to Athens for the second time in 3 weeks over there.
Why
so
not?
so why not? It's a great place to do television, So they used to set up in Tuscaloosa. They had like an office outside of Saban's office. I think they were over there so much at Alabama. But you got Kentucky number 11 and then Oklahoma State number 12. So outside of Oklahoma, you've really got Oklahoma State being the kind of the great hope over there for the Big 12 if Oklahoma falters a little bit down the road. So they better hope that it doesn't become like a circular firing squad over there and they start picking each other off, because they'll be left out for sure once again. But that is what the AP had, guys, and we're going to now compare that to what we have, and we're going to start off with Donovan's picks here. So this is the CFB Unfiltered. This is Donnie Mac's top 10. Donovan, go ahead and talk through what you have here.
Listen, I think when you rank your team, especially in the top 10, top 25, you need to look at it in 2 different ways. Who deserves to be there, just objectively, who have they beaten, how have they played, right? And then who, in reality, who is the best teams, right? I mean, honestly, does Alabama deserve to be lower? Maybe at kind of knocked down a little lower, maybe. But are they worse than Oregon? No. I mean, they're just not. So I kind of made a mix there. Georgia, obviously, right now is the undoubted best country in the team. Iowa, again, second best team in the country with that elite defense. Ohio State, listen, the Death Star is almost fully operational, ladies and gentlemen. watch and wait and see what happens with this Ohio State Buckeyes team because they're getting hot. Cincinnati, again, they're going to have to prove a lot given the playoffs this year, I think. Penn State, close win. Michigan State, rolling. Oklahoma, struggling. Bama, goodbye. Michigan Wolverines, as much as I hate to say it, they're looking like a formidable team in Oregon. Number 10, they had a bye week, but still sitting strong.
That's an interesting top 10 there. Jumping Ohio State up. It says 5-0 there. But we do have to correct that, Don. But there is a big one there in the loss column for Ohio State. That needs to,
That's just what he wishes it would say.
That's what I was feeling.
They're 5-0 in Donovan's heart. He's not counting that Oregon game. He's like, that didn't even happen. They say you block out the most painful memories in your life right there. So
make sure we did on mine too.
It must be in the note. But Josh, here's your top 10. So kind of talk through what your thought process was here as you were ranking these teams.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, like I said, Georgia is the most complete team right now. Iowa is passing all the tests, especially on defense. They have a caliber team that says we can compete with some of these top guys here. Cincinnati undefeated. That big win against Notre Dame is really that one resume pusher they have right now, but they are undefeated, so you have to give them some credit. Oklahoma still at 4. I'm not putting them over Cincinnati just because they have looked terrible against some of the lower opponents that they've played this season. But like I said, there's just a lot of questions going forward, what the quarterback situation looks like. And beating Texas the way that they did at the mutual site in a rivalry game like that, I got to have them at number 4. Of course, Alabama at number 5. Yes, they lose to Texas A&M, who's not ranked, but they beat Miami, who looks terrible now, but they were ranked 14 at the time. Florida at Florida when they were number 11, now number 20.
You didn't just use Miami.
Because look, I can't use Mercer, so I got to use Miami. Beat Florida at Florida when they were number 11. Yes, they're number 20 now, but that's because we beat them. And then Ole Miss the way that we did, like you said, just punching them in the nose. It was 42-21, but it felt so worse than that. I think us sitting at 5, I agree with AP top 25. I think we're still right in it to climb into the top 4 for the playoffs. Penn State, I think they're still a really good team. Love what they're doing on defense, too. I have them right there. So I think it's interesting. The biggest thing is how much is the Big Ten going to beat each other up along the way to knock each other back down? Who actually stays in that top 5 range that can sneak into the playoffs?
Classic SEC question now. Who's going to beat up on each other the most? Oh, I'm so sick of it.
So we'll see. Now for my top 10, you will know if you're watching on the 365 Sports YouTube channel, you will see conspicuous by their absence is Oklahoma. And I do not have Oklahoma in my top 10 if I was ranking because Oklahoma, who have they beaten? Texas is not a good football team. They got blown out by Arkansas, who couldn't stop, any offense right now. I mean, they're just Mississippi State ran through them like a hot knife through butter after Alabama was able to, stifle that Mississippi offense. And then they get blown out by Georgia. So that just shows you how far off Texas is caliber wise. And Oklahoma is right there. You had to scratch and claw and do everything they could to beat them. So I do not have the Sooners in my top 10. My top 10 goes as this: the Georgia Bulldogs, number 1, Iowa, number 2, Ohio State at 3. I agree with Donovan. This Ohio State, when you take into account their talent and the maturity level they have of some of their players that were in key positions, how they're getting this opportunity to now come along and kind of come into their own. I really like this Ohio State team. I think they'll be very hard to stop at the end of the year. I think that Iowa eventually will not have the speed on the perimeter and things like that to stay with Ohio State. I think they'll end up winning the Big Ten and probably end up finishing as high as 2 on the year. Cincinnati, I'm going to put them at 4 right now. I'm still wary of Cincinnati. I think they somehow find a way to stub their toe before the year is over with. Michigan, they just they're resilient right now. They're able to run the football. They have an identity. Nebraska is not an easy place to play. I don't care what anybody says. I know Scott Frost's team has struggled, but they did what they needed to do. We've proven now that during COVID, home field advantage is a big deal. Alabama goes to A&M and loses. You've had Florida go to Kentucky and lose. Upsets like that galore. So handling business on the road is always key. I will hold Alabama in the top 10 at number 6. Penn State drops just a couple spots to 7. I'm going to jump Kentucky up to number 8, guys. They're ranked number 11 in the AP poll. Kentucky, in my opinion, is right there defensively with a Georgia and an Iowa in terms of how they play team defense. Not their talent level, but the way that they play team defense, the way that they tackle. I like Kentucky a lot. I think it's going to be, intriguing. Now, offensively, they've got some liabilities, but they've found a way to do just enough to this point. They're undefeated. They've got quality, wins, over Florida, like you said, Josh, that Alabama beat, and then also beat LSU badly yesterday. Not just, I know LSU's not the greatest in the world, what they were from 2 years ago, but they beat them badly at home yesterday. Michigan State, I like them. Tough football team. And I'm going to give Oklahoma State some love, because the reason I got Oklahoma, I was debating on whether to put Oklahoma or Oklahoma State at number 10. And I'm going to go Oklahoma State because they beat Boise State on the road, and they've also beaten Kansas State. So Oklahoma State beats Boise State on the road, and Boise State beat BYU this past week, which is a good football team. So that was a good win. So that is my top 10. And all of our top 10s right there. So it's always interesting. I know there's things that I saw Donovan shaking his head down there when I had Kentucky at 8, but I'm just telling you, you look at 9 seniors. Donovan, you know how important senior leadership is. 9 seniors and probably 4 guys that are going to be anywhere from 1st to 5th round draft picks in the NFL on that defense this year. It's impressive.
They're stacked. I mean, they're absolutely stacked. It'll be interesting to see, where that takes them in terms of matchup against other elite talent, and see how much it can carry them. Before we move on to the next segment, though, I got to get this off my chest, right? These AP rankings, we talk a lot, we compared ours, right? Josh, this is going to sting a little bit for your Alabama boys. The hypocrisy of these rankings, and I am certain we're going to see this with the playoff committee rankings here in about a 3 or 4 week time span. The hypocrisy of these rankings is absurd. Ohio State loses to ranked Oregon, drops 6 spots. Should have dropped lower, in my opinion. They looked awful, right? Clemson, I understand they had a loss already. They go from 9 to 25 after losing at unranked NC State earlier in the season. Alabama loses to Texas A&M, whose wins are against, wait for it, Kent State, Colorado, and New Mexico. I understand Texas A&M had some injuries. Alabama loses to them and drops 4 spots. Let me ponder this question, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and Blaine and Josh. You can answer, you can hold it in your mind. If Iowa would have lost last Friday to Maryland, not would they, but should they have dropped lower than from 3 to number 7? Should they? No, they should have dropped out of the top 10. Exactly. They should have dropped lower than 7. If hypothetically, in a different world, they lose to Maryland last week, they should have dropped lower than 7, right? Didn't happen. But if that's what happened, they should have dropped right out of the top 10, and it didn't. That's my monologue. We'll come back to it, I'm sure, later in the season.
I just think those Florida and Ole Miss wins help Alabama hold tight.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think they're quality wins.
And they have it. Let's be honest. I think if we're talking about fairness and who's played who, so Alabama lost to Texas A&M last week. They have to go on the road once again this week, go to Starkville with all the cowbells. And guess who beat Texas A&M the week before? Mississippi State. And Mississippi State's defense has been playing excellent under Zach Arnett this year. And Mike Leach is going to see Henry To'oTo'o struggles of covering running backs out of the backfield and all that kind of stuff, and say, hey, that guy can't run very well. Let's try to ISO him up, and they're going to sling it around. Will Rogers will probably throw it 82 times.
80 times a game.
82 times in that game Saturday. So we will see how that goes. But it's time to do our previews. So we hit 2 games. Now, of course, we could have previewed Georgia, Kentucky, but guys, let's be honest. It's a BetOnline spread of 22.5 points in that game. Yes, it's intriguing. I think Kentucky has one of the better, maybe a top 5 defense in terms of defensive units in the country, but they just do not have the horses on the offensive side of the ball. We all are in agreement that I think Georgia takes care of business this week, especially with that game being in Athens. So we didn't want to preview that one. Instead, a game that we wanted to preview is a preview that a game that we are calling the hot seat game, and that is Florida traveling to Baton Rouge. You've got Dan Mullen, who has absolutely ticked off that fan base out there, running to the middle of the field like a smiling like a jackass eating briars, Josh, after they lost to Mark Stoops. I mean, it just that really, on the scene on on a Family Guy where Peter Griffin goes, "You know what grinds my gears, America? You." But the Florida fans were like, "You know what grinds my gears, Dan Mullen? You smiling after a loss." And then he compounds the mistake by going on his post game press conference, and somebody asked, "Did you get out coached by Mark Stoop?" He said, "I don't know. We had 382 yards to their 211. What do you think?" He failed to mention, like I said, that 7-point deficit on the scoreboard after that game. They go and play some school. Oh yeah, Vanderbilt, I think is who it was. We've already
he felt good about that one, I'm sure.
My guy Tavares and King and I on Second to None podcast, we've already kicked Vanderbilt out of the SEC. They're excommunicated, so that's just a non-conference win for Florida. Yeah, independent win for Florida this week. But then you have Ed Orgeron, who has threatened to kill people on live radio and say he's going to throw their remains in some kind of swampy fishing hole down there. So
that's a huge threat. I got family in Louisiana. You do not want to be in the fishing hole.
Obviously, I think Ed Orgeron is in a little bit of a hotter seat right now than Dan Mullen. But Josh, SEC matchup, you're familiar with, obviously with LSU from the SEC West, Florida. They played Alabama close. This is an intriguing matchup for me. 12 o'clock noon kickoff, so at 11 o'clock Central over there in the Bayou. It's going to be an interesting one. What's your thoughts on this one as we preview this matchup?
Yeah, this is, like you said, the hot seat showdown, or the Elam shoe redemption game, whichever one you want to call it. But being at LSU, you really wish this is a night game, because you remember last year how it was. It's foggy. It's a night game. It's such a great atmosphere. And they're like, nope, it's at 11 in the morning when everyone's getting up to tailgate. So, yes, I wish this was a night game. But I think it's a really interesting matchup for the fact of we kind of saw LSU actually run the ball against Kentucky. Like, did it matter? Not really, but it was the first time all season long they've actually ran the ball, which you have to do against Florida because their passing defense is phenomenal. They're not going to let Max Johnson throw the ball 40 times without getting picked off 2 or 3 times. So LSU, you've got to be able to run the ball. Now, here's the thing. Kentucky put up ungodly numbers on the ground against LSU this week, and Florida's looking at that, and they're like, we're going to be eating it up on the ground all day long. So for me, I think Florida is going to run the ball nonstop down their throat. Ed Orgeron's going to be scratching his head, trying to figure out what the heck to do. And LSU is just going to be there kind of looking confused as Max Johnson likely throws 2 interceptions against Florida.
Donovan, they're a 10-point favorite on the road. Florida is. Florida has
like those numbers.
Yeah, Florida has not instilled a lot of confidence though in their play in terms of how they played at Kentucky. I even saw some chinks in the armor when they played against Tennessee at home, right? Following that Alabama loss, they were kind of coming off of an emotional high, even though that's tough to say, like a moral victory type deal, but still they were real tight with the Tennessee team early into the third quarter of that game. And then those same kind of mistakes that were there that allowed Tennessee to hang around for parts of that game, rear their head against Kentucky. Again, they didn't even play what I consider an FBS football team this past week with Vanderbilt. What's your take on this matchup in terms of like kind of what Josh was saying, LSU's defensive front? Can they slow down Florida's running game at all? That kind of stuff.
Well, I think it comes down to 2 things. And the first has all to do with Florida's run game, right? When you look at the statistics, Florida's leading rusher is Emory Jones, right? He is an electrifying dual threat quarterback. When it happens to be that your quarterback is your leading rusher, right, it tends to mean that you have a lot of read option, you have a lot of quarterback option run plays, right? That doesn't take, an Iowa or Georgia type or Kentucky type run defense and overall defense to stop it. It takes the defensive players being smart, and it takes the game plan being great. It's like when you play Army, right? Army, teams like Army that run the triple option, the wing T, could beat anyone in the country if that defense has no idea how to stop their offense, because otherwise they're just going to run like crazy. Florida, in a way, is similar to that, where if you have a good game plan, you play smart, you play your gap responsibilities, you can stop their run game. And if you stop the run game, you're going to force Emory Jones to throw some errant passes. The second part of this is seeing which one of these teams care more about their coach and their culture, right? Florida's still ranked, but you're starting to see some chinks in that armor, right? You're seeing the kind of breakdown a little bit. And with LSU, with Ed Orgeron, all the rumors. Listen, I understand Ed Orgeron maybe said some things that people didn't like, right? As a former player, there can be things recited on this podcast that have the FCC come in and shut us down automatically that I've heard way worse than Ed Orgeron, right? So I guarantee you those players are hearing that and be like, okay, come on. Like that's not the worst thing he said. It's a matter of who cares about their coach more, right? Who cares about the program and the culture being built? If I had to bet my money on it, I'd bet LSU cares more about Ed Orgeron and what he's built. Now, it's not to say that they're going to win, but it's to say that they're not going to roll over, and go down without a fight.
Yeah, Dan Mullen's one of the most awkward human beings on the face of the planet. I mean, honestly, you've seen him dance on the sideline. It's cringeworthy. If you watch him on TV, if you're watching on the 365 Sports YouTube channel right now, you'll see how Dan Mullen wears his headpiece half the time. I mean, it's over on his cheek. I don't know what he's doing. It's kind of crazy. Florida did. This is worth noting, guys. They were only up 21-0 on Vanderbilt at halftime. Now, the reason that's newsworthy is because I think Georgia scored 35 points in like 30 seconds on Vanderbilt to start that game off. I mean, it was crazy how fast the points got up on that game. I think Jordan Davis played a total of 8 snaps in that ball game. I
didn't see Kirby come back out after halftime. I think he went home.
Kirby went back to Athens. No, that's how it all kind of went down. But I just don't have a lot of confidence in this Gators football team. Give me LSU to beat them at home. I'm going to go LSU rallies around Coach O. They throw Dan Mullen and the Gators in the fishing hole this week and end up taking him. I'm gonna take LSU to cover and take LSU to win this one outright. I will say LSU wins this game. Because Keyshawn Butte gets going, rolling. I like Deion Smith, Jack Besh. They've got some guys who can catch the football. They just have to protect. Maybe Orgeron will be smart enough to, leave a running back in protection every once in a while, not go 5-man protection every single play. So we'll see how that goes. But I like Max Johnson and company to win this one at home. I like that early kickoff in their favor too. Don't know if the LSU fans will be liquored up quite enough yet to really impact it like they want to over there. But hey, who knows? They could be still tanked up from the night before if it's that early. You never know. But I'm going to take LSU to win this game, and I'm going to say they do so in more of a low-scoring affair because I think they would have to shut Florida down and able to do it. So I'm going to say LSU wins this one 27-21.
I'll say this. There's an interesting stat. Ed Orgeron has only beaten one team with a shade of blue since he called out the LSU fan at the game. And that was McNeese Cowboys, by the way, so it's not looking good. I think Florida wins this one. I think Florida runs the ball. Derek Stingley being out is a huge deal. I mean, like I said, with Malachi Moore being out for Alabama, Stingley's been out for a few games now. You're kind of seeing those are the games they're struggling so bad in. Yes, you run for 147 yards against Kentucky, but I promise you, Florida is going to be begging you to throw the ball, and Elam knows that. It's going to be Elam versus Butte. It's going to be a great matchup, but I just trust Emory Jones in the running game. I don't think LSU can stop them if they just continue to run the ball down their throat and be physical with LSU. I see Ed Orgeron being frustrated all game long. Give me Florida. I think they win by 13. I like the 10 points. I think they put it on LSU.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a last gasp, right, from LSU to try and save their coach. Not saying that Ed Orgeron gets fired if they lose this week, but it's not going to help the case to keep him, right? I think it's going to be one last gasp, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I think Florida wins this one in a close game, 31-27, just because of the talent they have going on. Even with all the questions they have, their coaches and their culture, I still think the talent and their base systems of their run game, right, and their dual threat quarterback, Emory Jones, is going to keep them alive and win this game.
All right, so a little bit we got 2-1 there, so we'll see how it all breaks down this weekend. Now we're going to move to some Big 12 action and break down a game that I think is very interesting. You got Texas, a 5.5-point favorite, despite their losses this year and their heartbreaking loss to Oklahoma last week against Oklahoma State. You got the Fighting Mike Gundys, the rockin' mullets coming in there to take care of business. against Texas, and they're undefeated on the year. Like I said, I had them in my top 10 based off that win going to Boise State and winning on the road, and they play a good brand of defense. I think they're averaging, allowing less than 100 yards rushing per game in the 90 range there. So I like this Cowboys team and their defense. Donovan, is that defense going to be solid enough to stop Bijan Robinson and that Texas running attack?
Listen, they certainly have the opportunity to, right? I understand Texas, put up ungodly numbers, right, and against Oklahoma, they put up points. But is that more of a factor of how good Texas offense is overall? Because we know Bijan Robinson is probably the best running back in the country, right? But I think that's more of a reflection on how bad Oklahoma's defense was. Oklahoma State's defense is going to play better, right? But is it going to be that, okay, Texas offense really is that good, right? And if it is that good as they were last week, I don't know if Oklahoma State can keep up with that. Jalen Warren, running back for Oklahoma State, over 500 yards rushing behind that stout offensive line for Oklahoma State. That offensive line has surprised a lot of people, right? The big question on that offense, if Texas's offense, plays to what they did last week, you got to ask, again, the big question is Oklahoma State, can they match it? And the quarterback plays, I think will hamper them. Spencer Sanders, only 5 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I don't know if they can keep up with the Texas offense if they're rolling like they were last week.
I agree with you. This is something I've been thinking about recently. Oklahoma State kind of reminds me of Kentucky, like a really good, stout, physical defense, but they have a liability on offense. Will Levis looks good at times. Spencer Sanders looks good at times, but then he has games like Baylor where he's just throwing interceptions, and that defense bailed him out. Baylor could do nothing after they got the interceptions. I was so mad as a Baylor minus 10 better. Like, you're getting the ball in your territory back-to-back possessions, it seems like, with nonstop interceptions. You could not do anything with it. So I really like this Oklahoma State defense to keep it close. Like you said, Bijan Robinson, obviously one of the best, if not the best running back in the country. That's where the game's really going to come down to. Like, are you going to allow him to run the ball? You have a good defense. Help out your quarterback, Spencer Sanders, who shows some flashes, but he doesn't have that, like, I can win this game myself ability. It's more of, I can keep it close, and I kind of hope that our defense wins this game for us. It is interesting, Oklahoma State's undefeated. They're the higher ranked team. Texas seems like big favorites this game. The ESPN Power Football Index has them as a 79% chance of winning the game. I'm leaning more towards Texas this game just because I feel like their offense can flow. The defense is suspect, as we saw with the Oklahoma game, but I trust a better offense than what I see over there in Oklahoma State. I just haven't seen enough willpower on that offense to win a game at Texas.
I don't know. I think the Oklahoma State defense is going to be miles better than what Oklahoma threw out there against Texas last week. They're going to tackle better. And then you mentioned the similarities to Kentucky, right? Also, their number one receiving threat, where's number one, is a transfer, just like Wan'Dale Robinson. Where's the number one was a transfer from Nebraska to Kentucky. Tay Martin, leading receiver for Oklahoma State, transferred from Washington State. Actually, 2 years ago now, he played last year at Oklahoma State. Now he's their leading receiver this year, has had 3 100-yard games on the year. I like Tay Martin there. He's going to have to do a lot in this game, and, Texas is going to try to take him away. But Jalen Warren, Spencer Sanders got to try to find some continuity. But I like I'm kind of old school. I'm going to go defense first over here. I'm going to say that Sark and them continue to have some woes on defense, makes Oklahoma State's offense look better than what it is, and Oklahoma State comes up with some key stops. I'm going to take Oklahoma State to upset them on the road.
Yeah, you saw Texas struggle against Arkansas with a good defense. I can see why you want to go that way. Arkansas didn't have the best offense at the time. Seems like
Still
it's
don't.
clicking now, but it's just against Ole Miss.
It's just because Ole Miss's defense is terrible. But I'm gonna give my score here. I'm gonna say Oklahoma State wins this one. I'm gonna say they win it 28 to. I'm gonna say they win it 28-24 over Texas.
So they are a real top 10 team. Are they better than Michigan? That's my question.
No, not better than Michigan. I don't think anybody in the Big 12 is better than Michigan. I think all 4 teams in the Big 10 East are better than anybody in the Big 12.
Wow. I don't know. I still a little suspect about Michigan, but
yeah, listen, Texas run game looks like it was rolling offense, right? Scoring a lot of points. I can never bet against one of my former teammates and his team going on right now. Blaine, I'm with you. That old school football just kind of feels like it's back, right? And Oklahoma State almost embodies that like a handful of other teams. I think the gut punch that it is, I don't think a lot of people understand how much of a gut punch, right? Just a potential season record is to lose your rivalry game like that when you had it so close to you after you were dominating for so long. To lose it like that, to just basically hand it over, how devastating that is. I'm going to go Oklahoma State 27, and I'm going to go Texas 20.
All right, Josh, you're the last hope for the Longhorns. You going to throw the score out there?
I believe in Sarkisian enough, not a lot, but enough to win against the Oklahoma State team that I still have questions about. I'm going to say this is a closer one. I'm going to say 27-20. Well, I don't know. What's the spread on this one right now?
5.5.
5.5. I'll take it. I'll take the spread 27-20 Texas.
All right, guys. So we've previewed Florida at LSU. We've previewed Oklahoma State at Texas. We've given you our rankings versus the AP rankings and given you our reaction from the weekend that was. Join us on Friday as we'll have an episode dropping here on the CFB Unfiltered podcast. We're a part of the Believe Podcast Network. Make sure you follow at CFB Unfiltered on Twitter and Instagram. And also thank you to 365 Sports YouTube channel for letting us stream on their platform over here. Also, check out the guys on the Sideline Sports Network, guys. They have a lot of different accounts over there that we partner with social media and things like that at sidelines_SN at SSN_college CFB. Check those guys out. And for Josh Taylor and Donovan White, I am Blaine Gilmer, and we will catch you on Friday to preview a couple more games and give some key insights on individual matchups. And who knows, we may even have more news. Ed Orgeron may threaten to kill someone else. So we will see you next time.
Bryce Young might be Heisman favorite still, by the way.
Yeah, Heisman favorites. We'll have those too. Great point. So got it all coming your way on Friday, and we'll see you next time on CFB Unfiltered.